Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror.
Okay, so Nurse Kelly, what do you remember happening on September 11th, 2001?
I was actually here as a student at DeSales, and I believe I was in Mr. Slutsky's class when we found out. And the day was a blur, but I remember it vividly. And it was wild. It disrupted the whole school day and everything afterwards. So.
I remember the day being that my son was in school. He was in first grade, and my daughter was home. She was in preschool, and she was watching Barney. And my neighbor called me, and she said, I know that usually you're not watching TV during the day or doing something with our kids, but you should turn on the TV. And so she didn't even tell me what was going on. She said, turn on the TV now. And so I turned off the Barney video and turned on the TV, and then started to watch everything that everybody was watching in the country, like live as it unfolded. So I believe one of the towers was already hit, and so I started to watch it then, and then watched it the rest of the day like everybody else in America did. And I think a lot of people later said that their instinct was to go to school and pick up their kids, but I don't remember thinking that. I don't remember thinking that my son wasn't safe, but I do remember then going back, picking him up and bringing him home. And later, he was a little bit old enough to watch it, and we were watching it, of course, all day and all evening. I think he might have been there when the tower collapsed, because it did take a while for the tower to collapse. So I think he might have been home. I do remember my son saying, when the tower went down, he said, were there moms and dads in there? And I said yes. And so I know he kind of had an idea of what was going on. It was sad.
I remember I was in the teacher's lounge. I was talking to, I can't remember who I was talking to, but I do remember Mrs. Rother came in from the library, and she's like, something's wrong. A plane just crashed into the World Trade Center. And she was in the first period class doing something with her students. And I just remember it was such a perfect day. It was kind of like today. It was just cool, sunny, beautiful. And it just seemed weird, like why would a plane crash? And then the second one hit, and then I think everyone knew this was really, really bad. And I remember, and I was telling students today, the technology wasn't so great. So we had a TV in my classroom, a color TV on a cart. And I remember we just watched it all day long. And I remember just sending an email, because I had one computer in the classroom, to my wife, and we were talking. And I think everybody was just panicky and uncertain, and it was just strange, and it was just nonstop, information and devastation, and we were watching it in real time. I remember at the end of the day, we canceled all activities, and everybody just went home. And I can't ever think of another time where everything was canceled. Like, go home, be with your families. And I remember being at home with my wife and just being in disbelief. I mean, it was the paradox of the day. It was so beautiful and so horrible at the same time. The day was just, like I said, so sunny and perfect. And you just couldn't believe what we were watching. And I think after that, it was just anger, fear. I think a lot of kids in the classroom had a lot of questions, and we talked a lot about it. Yeah, that's what I do remember about that day.
And then my second question is, what emotions were you feeling as you saw all of this unfold on live television?
Pretty much all of the bad ones you can think of. Extreme sadness, heartbreak, a lot of anger, just like raw feelings. And then at the same time, weirdly, it was like a strong sense of pride for our country and love for our country.
I know, I would say that everyone was confused. We didn't really know at the time. I know looking back now, everybody knows what happened. But at the time, we didn't know what was going on, if it was an accident or if it was an attack. And then remember, we were hearing reports that there was a plane down in Pennsylvania, and then there was another one that crashed outside the Pentagon. And so everybody was just trying to, I think, sort out what was going on. So I remember being confused, of course, horrified, because it did take a long time for the towers to come down. So people were watching, it burn, and then realizing that the firefighters weren't getting up there, and the people that were in the floors above where the plane went in weren't getting down. People were jumping out of the windows. So it was horrifying, and we watched everything live as it happened, and so scary, horrifying, and really confusing.
I'll tell you, you kind of run the gamut. I think at first it was just sadness. I mean, when you experience something that traumatic with so many people at the same time, it's all anyone talked about. It was the only thing you could think about for at least a couple of weeks and more. But I mean, it was nonstop. So I think there was just this constant sense of fear, loss, sadness for these families and what they went through, confusion. What do you do next? I remember the radio would play the national anthem sometimes on the radio, and I remember literally, I was driving one day and I heard that, and I think I just broke into tears while I was driving. It was just this emotional, I don't know, it was just welling inside, trying to hold it in, and it was just wow, this was just so painful on a national level that I still remember that moment, sitting in a light and tears in my eyes thinking, I can't believe this just happened. So I think there's a sense of nationalism too, as a country coming together with a purpose, but again, I think just overwhelming grief, I think is probably the best word, and confusion, because what's going to happen next? And that was basically where it went, and especially in classrooms, talking about what's going to happen next, and then with Afghanistan, and then Iraq, and then it was a contentious 5 years there of a lot of debates in class and discussions, and it all kind of started that day.
What was the first thought that kind of popped into your head when you saw this happening when that TV came into the classroom?
We're at war. I guess the first thing you think of is you're being attacked. And I don't think we know what it's like. I mean, in this country, we had such a sense of safety that when you start to see your country being attacked, and you realize it's not just one plane, and it's two planes, and that's three planes, and that's four planes, and you're like, how many more planes are there? And you see that the president is being whisked away, and people are in bunkers, and you realize this could be the beginning of a war. You don't know. So I think that was kind of my first reaction, what's going to happen next?
If there's anything you'd like to add, you can, but otherwise, I don't have any more questions.
I guess I also would say that I just remember how much it consumed everybody's life for so long. I don't think I watched the news and heard any regular news for weeks and weeks. It was the only thing that was on the news. It was the only thing that everybody was talking about. People were trying to figure out how to donate and what they could do, but there just really wasn't a lot, and that was kind of sad and frustrating. At first, people thought that there were people that they would find in the rubble, but then they realized there was really just nobody to be saved. And so just as it all kind of settled in for everybody, I remember that it was just consumed everything.